Welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching a special show on Parliamentary Select Committee. I'm Amritanshu Rai. In this show, we bring to you in-depth coverage of the recommendation of the Parliamentary panel to the government. Today, we bring to you a report of the Select Committee on the Lokpal Bill. The Select Committee of Rajya Sabha came up with a unanimous report on the Lokpal Bill. The committee approved of the delinking of Lokayuktas, the state corruption watchdog, from the central law.
The Select Committee report on Lokpal makes it mandatory for states to have Lokayuktas within 1 year after passing the Lokpal bill. The state governments can choose to adopt the Lokpal as passed by the centre or have their own version of the anti-graft law.
Different issues were there. One is about, basic thing is the federalism. Whether a law can be passed such a situation, because this is a concern about the government officials in different states. Naturally, it is coming under it is a state subject. Then law and order. Many issues were there. So, central government can enact something which infringes the right of the state governments. This kind of issues were there.
If the central government and the parliament passes a legislation about the Lokayukta, it will be violation of the federal principles of the constitution. Therefore, it will be liable to be struck down by the Supreme Court because it would be violating the basic structure of the constitution.
जो फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर है, संघवाद का सिद्धांत के आधार पर हम सिद्धांत को हमारा संविधान जो है कबूल करता है और उसको बने जो फंडामेंटल स्ट्रक्चर है संविधान का, उसमें वो शामिल है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये फैसला दे दिया है. इसमें लोगों का एतराज़ था कि साहब ये उसमें इंक्रोचमेंट है.
The committee favors the constitution of a 5-member body comprising of Prime Minister, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Leader of the Opposition in Lok Sabha, Chief Justice of India, or a sitting Supreme Court judge nominated by CJI for selecting the Lokpal. It also wants an eminent jurist as a 5th member of the Lokpal, who will be nominated by the President of India. The report stipulates that members of the Lokpal should not be affiliated to any political party in any manner.
You will have to have a kind of a search committee, it's called, and that committee would select a particular individual, and the qualifications are also given that what kind of person you want, who will be those 4 members, and therefore there would be distinguished people from different fields, especially from judicial fields, and therefore their recommendations would be impartial and beyond any iota of doubt. Yes. Therefore, this procedure is foolproof according to us and will give us a credible Lokpal as an institution in the country.
ये सही है कि जो मेजॉरिटी पार्टी होती है वो उसका स्पीकर होता है, लेकिन स्पीकर एक दफ़ा स्पीकर की कुर्सी पर बैठ जाता है तो अपेक्षा उससे यही होती है कि वो इम्पार्शियल ढंग से काम करेगा.
Because earlier the proposal was something like that, the third person means two was the balance, if you can say. The third person, generally earlier concept was the government will appoint the third person, means president's appointment on the basis of the advice of the ministry means, what is that? So here also some slight variation, some more space for consultation.
So and here the balance is maintained?
Balance to some extent it can maintain. That is why the new proposal came.
The jurisdiction of Lokpal will include societies, trusts, associations of persons which are wholly or partly financed by the government. Organizations receiving foreign donations over 10 lakh a year will also be under Lokpal's jurisdiction. Organizations that receive donations from the public below a certain specified annual income are exempted from Lokpal's purview. According to the report, on receipt of a complaint against a public official, the Lokpal will first determine whether to proceed on the matter or not. If it decides to proceed, it can either order a preliminary inquiry or order an investigation by an investigating agency to find out whether there is a prima facie case made out or not. At this stage, the public official will not be given an opportunity to be heard. The investigating agency will then submit its report to a bench consisting of not less than 3 members of the Lokpal. After examining the report, the Lokpal bench may grant sanction to its prosecution wing or may direct the competent authority to file charge sheet before a special court. Lokpal can also direct the department related authority to take action against the public official.
जो भी रिपोर्ट होगा चार्जशीट के रूप में या फाइनल रिपोर्ट के रूप में, वो पहले सबमिट होगा लोकपाल के पास। लोकपाल जो है उसका अध्ययन करेगा और उसके बाद जो है वो ट्रायल कोर्ट में जाएगा। अब मान लीजिए फाइनल रिपोर्ट किसी के खिलाफ जांच हुई और जांच के बाद अनुसंधान के बाद जो है सीबीआई ने कहा कि नहीं साहब मामला नहीं बनता है, तो उसको वो देख सकता है लोकपाल, और उसको अगर समझ में आता है कि नहीं साहब मामला बन सकता है, उसको पुनः अनुसंधान करने के लिए उस बिंदु पर वो निर्देशित कर सकता है सीबीआई।
Our suggestion is that there should be no duplication. Yes. So the work courts go by the criminal jurisprudence and all anti-corruption laws. Courts have the final authority of trial. Yes. Lokpal cannot be prosecutor, investigator, and the judge. That's not possible.
Then CBI, independence of CBI. If CBI is independent and it is a just an expansion or extension of the government, then there is no meaning in appointing such a no meaning in a Lokpal and inquiry system, the CBI system, which is continuing as now.
The Select Committee's report has upheld the provision for 50% representation of SCs, STs and OBCs, minorities and women in anti-graft watchdog. The report says an authority like the Lokpal must have people from diverse sections of the society.
Now the state governments will be able to create the institution of Lokayuktas according to their requirements, as the Select Committee has left the creation of the institution of Lokayuktas to the state government. To discuss more on the issue, I am joined by my colleague Raj Kamal Rao. Raj, what did the committee feel about the Lokayuktas?
Appointment of Lokayuktas was a contentious issue when committee was deliberating with several state parties who were part of the Select Committee. They've decided not to involve in any state's objective because the constitution provides a federal structure to state governments to have their own policy. Since the Lokayuktas and the constitution of these Lokayuktas is a state subject, committee wanted to eliminate the part 3 of the bill which deals with Lokayuktas and left it to the state governments. As a result of it, states which already have Lokayuktas can continue with that, or else they can take this particular Lokpal as their model law and proceed with their own Lokayuktas.
We spoke to the chairman of the Select Committee, Mr. Satyavrat Chaturvedi, and began by asking him the role of the Select Committee and the consequence of its report.
Now, the job of the committee was to find a consensus on issues that are contentious, that are disputed. And the purpose was to make the bill and make the law more effective. One.
Sir, when it comes to appointment of CBI and the director of CBI, having a separate wing for investigation, what was the point that you've considered in coming to a conclusion on that, sir?
Well, the CBI director, as of now, we know that is being appointed by the government.
Yes.
Now, once CBI becomes one of the prominent and major premier institution of investigation for Lokpal, then in that case, what was felt was that CBI should be given more autonomy. There had been a lot of attack on CBI's independence and so on. So we did not go into the political attacks and this and that, but we wanted to ensure that CBI, as far as possible, remains autonomous when it comes to functioning under Lokpal. The director of CBI now, as per the recommendations of the committee, would be appointed by a collegium.
Yes.
This collegium will consist of three members. Yeah. The Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, and Chief Justice of India. Now, having Chief Justice of India and the Leader of the Opposition in Lok Sabha will
balance out
provide the credibility that was requisite to the selection process of directors.
Sir, I have one last question on the suggestions made by the select committee. Sir, Lokayuktas, protecting the federal structure, because the decision seems to be states will take their own call and they will have their own law. What was the discussions made? Because except BJP and Congress, there were several regional parties who made the representation with the select committee.
Yes.
So what was their point of view on that?
Now, the most contentious issue was some of the political parties felt that perhaps through the present provision by Parliament enacting a law for Lokayukta, that amounted to usurping the rights of the states, the federal rights of the state. That was the contention. And there was a very heated debate on this.
Yes.
Well, in the committee, we decided finally that we must, number one, have a mechanism in every state. We must ensure to have a mechanism in every state to deal with corruption cases. So this was one. Two, the rights of the states should not be usurped or should not appear to be being usurped. So what we did was, part 3 of the bill,
Yes.
which contained the provisions for the
Lokayukta.
we deleted.
Deleted. Yes.
Once that got deleted, the objection of usurping the rights of the state became irrelevant.
Yes.
But at the same time, we made a provision in the bill itself. The present bill, the recommendation is that every state, after the passage and
within 1 year
and notification of this law,
they have to.
within 1 year they will have to have a Lokayukta in their state by enacting a law in their own legislature.
This is a mandate.
This is a mandate. So it is mandatory for every state to have a mechanism of Lokayukta. But what kind of a Lokayukta? Since from one state to the other, the needs would be different, the circumstances would be different. So therefore, we gave them the right, we gave them they already have the right
Yes.
to the constitution, so they can enact a law for themselves.
What about those states who wanted to adopt the central policy on this?
After becoming a law, this will go to all states.
Okay.
The government of India has the power, executive power, whereby in procedure, whereby they can send it as a model act. But those states who want to adopt it, they may. Those who want to enact their own law, they have the liberty.
It's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will tell you more about some of the important suggestions of the Select Committee. Welcome back. The Select Committee has recommended the creation of a Directorate of Prosecution under the CBI, which will be accountable to the Lokpal.
The Select Committee's report says that the Director of the Prosecution Wing will be appointed on the recommendation of the Central Vigilance Commission (CVC). The Director will be selected by a collegium comprising of Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition in Lok Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. Director of Prosecution and Director of CBI will have a tenure of 2 years. CBI will be empowered to appoint a panel of advocates with the consent of the Lokpal. The Director of the CBI will be responsible for all expenditure incurred by the CBI for concluding or conducting investigations. The Lokpal will have the power of superintendence over CBI in cases referred by it. Officers investigating cases referred by Lokpal can be transferred only with the approval of Lokpal.
सीबीआई का जो डायरेक्टर होगा उसकी जो नियुक्ति होगी उसके लिए जो कॉलेजियम बनेगा उसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट के चीफ जस्टिस को हम लोगों ने रखा है, प्रधानमंत्री होंगे, स्पीकर लोकसभा होंगे और लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन जो है लोकसभा में। तो इस तरह से जिस समिति में, जिस कॉलेजियम में सुप्रीम कोर्ट के चीफ जस्टिस मौजूद होंगे, वहाँ जो है कोई गड़बड़ी की संभावना जो है नहीं होगी, ये मान करके हम लोगों ने कॉलेजियम को बदला है।
The authority of the CBI should not be diluted. Therefore, a special investigating wing, and the powers to conduct inquiries and investigations should remain with the CBI.
CBI prosecution is a very important thing in any government, because the prosecution wing is deciding about the course of all these proceedings in front of the court, like that. So, what is the practice now in CBI? Generally, a senior government officials, most probably a joint secretary level officer is appointed as the prosecution wing head of the CBI. And if some serious corruption comes and which government is involved, naturally the government officials and even high executive posts like ministers like that is involved, then the joint secretary, who is an appointee of the government, the existing government, he can say that there is no case in it. Like that, this kind of things can happen.
Supreme Court may conduct an inquiry against the chairperson or members on a presidential reference or based on a petition signed by at least 100 members of the parliament. A member of the Lokpal can be suspended only if the Supreme Court makes a recommendation or an interim order. The Supreme Court has also recommended several measures to protect complainants.
A reservation is something different, which is constitutionally the provision is there. Yes. But this is a representation. Representation means it's not a reservation, but steps should be there to ensure that the backward, oppressed sections, backward sections, SC and ST, other backward sections also must come in that.
Committees take on this kind of people we want there in the Lokpal. These reservation, which is not reservation, it is representation actually. So we want it to be as broad-based as possible. But there is a practical problem. Are the people from these categories available? Yes. That is another question, which is a very important question. Therefore, those provisions which are made and ultimately don't turn out to be feasible create problems.
The bill, as approved by the committee, has now been approved by the cabinet with certain changes. The government has not accepted a key recommendation of the panel that an official facing an inquiry by the Lokpal should not be given an opportunity to be heard at the stage of the preliminary inquiry. The amendments will now be put to vote in Rajya Sabha, where the measure is struck in the last year. After getting cleared from the upper house, the legislation will travel back to Lok Sabha for fresh approval of the amendments.
According to the recommendations, the investigating officer under the CBI will not be transferred without the approval of the Lokpal. This provision was not existing in the earlier version of the Lokpal bill. To discuss more on the issue, I am joined by my colleague Raj Kamal Rao. Raj, what will be the impact of this on the Lokpal?
See, the role of CBI has always been scrutinized by social activists and several civil society groups, saying that CBI has government's intent and they are implementing the government's point of view in particular aspects. Even there were Supreme Court orders where guiding the CBI to not to act on the favor or in the favor of the government. Here, clearly in the Select Committee, they have decided to give an unbiased and unparalleled approach to appointment of CBI directors. Hence, they decided to have a collegium to appoint these CBI directors. Here, the interesting point is CVC will now recommend the deputy director of that particular CBI.
We spoke to a member of the Select Committee, Mr. Bhupen Yadav, and began by asking him the impact of the proposed mechanism.
What is the recommendation says on inquiring any corruption activity against any public official?
No, there is very big debate and very big issue before the committee also, that who are the public official, because in earlier bill the private NGOs are also a public official. So who are the public official? Only those persons who are getting any aid from the government, because we want first in the transparency and accountability in the government money also, accountability to the government officers. So if we include all the NGOs and all the private sector also, then the body which want to be created as the name of Lokpal was burdened by their own weight also, so it will not function very properly. So we are giving a recommendation on the purpose of public official, and we distinguish from the private sector and the government aided institution is concerned.
Sir, now I'll come to one crucial question. What were your disagreements on the they were the unanimous report, so someone can claim that, but every party had their own disagreements over certain issues. What were your disagreements on the report presented?
There is one issue which is regarding the representation and the reservation issues. And reservation issues, it is not more than 50%, and there is a reservation to the minority also. What we said, we can provide a reservation only in the framework of our constitution, not beyond the framework of which is not permissible in the constitution. You cannot give that reservation. So that is the issue. We are giving a separate note also, and our party will give our view in the forum of parliament also.
We are now approaching the end of the show, but before we end the show, let me leave you with the concluding remarks of the chairman of the Select Committee.
But what is more important is the passage of the bill in Rajya Sabha, and thereafter it will have to go to Lok Sabha.
Lok Sabha, yes.
So that finally the law has to take a concrete shape.
Thank you for watching Select Committee. We'll be back with a new episode and a new issue. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.